Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for joining our session today, especially at 4 p.m. So I'm here with Alex. Alex, you want to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Yeah, not much. I'm the Deputy CEO of Allianz Group. We'll talk about Allianz for half a slide later, but we're one of the largest insurers in the world, so we cover a lot of ground and a lot of data. And that's why we're very excited about all the agentic work that Google is doing.
Actually, you're being modest. I really want to say thank you not only for being here today, but also for your help and being partners and testing everything agentic we've been doing, and helping to make something that actually makes sense in the real world.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. All right. So we have Alex. I'm Vicente. I'm a PM in the Google Threat Intelligence team. And today we are going to discuss and to show you a little bit around our agentic capabilities that we have implemented. Actually, they are G8 since January. So if you are a user of Google Threat Intelligence, you can actually share your experience. Hopefully, this has been a good one. And yeah, basically, this is our talk today. Hopefully, you find it interesting. So let's start from the beginning. In case that you are not familiar with Google Threat Intelligence, this is our threat intelligence product, as the name indicates, which combines data from VirusTotal, combines data from Mandiant, plus Google telemetry. And since January, we have our AI capabilities that help you use it in a different way. So traditionally, how our users were using, if you are a user of VirusTotal, for instance, you were doing some hunting, you were searching for some indicators of compromise. Well, you have to do some queries in some specific language in order to retrieve different IOCs. Then you need to go and check the ones that you're interested in, et cetera. Since we have all this data, plus a few 100,000 reports, and we have also a lot of OSINT, we have malware cars, we have threat actor cars. It makes it increasingly difficult to deal with that. So the agentic capabilities provide a different experience for users. It's actually a whole engine that we will use in different parts of the product. So you can use, in this case, AI models to retrieve, digest, and produce information, to produce deliverables in a different way. So yes, let me tell you a simple example, how our users, instead of doing some searches, now they can simply throw wherever is the use case to our chatbot. And they can ask something like, hey, tell me what's new in terms of threats for the, I don't know, telecommunications industry in Europe for the last 6 months. Provide me with the TTPs, check the different technical capabilities, and by the way, produce some rules so I can check this in my environment. So this is the kind of use case that you can do now in one go. So instead of doing searches, instead of aggregating information, now you have this capability to implement your use case directly and to make it actionable for you. So this new paradigm, as I was explaining, is a totally different way of interacting. And we have seen a big change in how our users can get much more value from Google Threat Intelligence. When we are explaining what agentic does, for me, this is a bit frustrating slide for me. Because in reality, we do this and much more, in the sense that we are not using a dedicated model. We are using generic models. In this case, we're using Gemini Flash 3.1. And the work is in the data that we have behind, in the tools that we have to access this data, and in the pre-processing we do, in the indexing, in the skills that we implement, in the NCPs, et cetera. So the result of whatever is your intent, we can provide in the best possible way. We can have dedicated tools for creating, I don't know, YARA rules. We can have dedicated tools for aggregating the results of a large collection of IOCs, et cetera. Now, what we try to do from the beginning is to understand what are the main use cases for our users. And with this, we concentrated in a few areas where we dedicated most of the time in order to make sure that we provide good results and that we provide high-quality deliverables. And that's what we have here, a few boxes. But in reality, you can do much more. Okay? So in terms of threat intelligence, many of our users are like asking for briefings on different topics. It's very typical, for instance, what happened for the last 24 hours and how is that affecting me? Or can you make a report regarding ransomware, how it evolved in the last 6 months, and things like that. You can do it in multiple languages, so nothing new. In terms of tactical intelligence, you don't need to know how to retrieve this data anymore in terms of BTI queries. You can simply ask in natural language, we will retrieve for you, like what are the last samples used by ransomware, by this group. Just tell me what they have in common. Tell me the main TTPs, for instance. In terms of threat hunting, it's a way of simply making something actionable out of this. Like, how can I hunt for this in my CM? How can I get some YARA rules to check in my environment? And basically, we are agnostic in terms of languages, so you can produce in any language that you want. You can actually create the hypothesis for hunting if you want to do with your team. In terms of documentation, supportability, of course. And malware analysis is the last one. Malware analysis is, well, basically one of my favorite ones. But this is an ongoing development in the sense that we are always adding new capabilities. I don't think we will ever come here and say malware analysis is done. We are always including new tools. And actually, we are taking advantage from all the Mandiant team that we have now part of Google Threat Intelligence. We have the people from Flare. We have specific tools for different malware families for extracting the configuration. And all of this is something that we keep adding more and more as we advance with our malware analysis capabilities. For instance, we included things like analyzing skills, analyzing models, analyzing MCPs as malware evolves continuously, right? And at the same time, it will be an ever-changing environment, right? Besides this, we have the advantages that the models themselves, they provide a lot of good capabilities that we complement with all the context that we have in Google Threat Intelligence. So you can drop like a piece of code, and it will be able to interpret what it is doing. And this is something very useful for things like, hey, this is some obfuscated script that I found in my environment.
Let me jump in there for a second, right? Just to talk a bit about how our threat intelligence team is using this. I think the first thing that really turbocharged our threat intelligence team is we keep getting these random asks from our board, where it's like, we read about this thing in the newspaper 3 days ago, please tell us how we're affected. This really helps, because all our TI team now does is like, hey, you know, how does this threat actor and this thing they found affect us? And it goes away and says like, hey, we can't find any of the IOCs. Here's a report. Do you want it as a Word document or a PDF or whatever? And that gives them the 80% answer. Whereas before they would, you know, start digging in things and start reading Hacker News or Bleeping Computer or whatever it is these days. That's the cool thing here. I think one of the things that I was surprised about is that actually one of the things that Google puts into all the threat intel data is news data as well. Right? So from Gemini, you can actually pull a lot of the news articles because they're in Google News anyway. So it actually has that as a source as well. So that to us has been super useful for the team, just to give them a head start on answering all these random requests that come from management, me being included sometimes.
Yeah, it's always this extra context, but also you don't limit yourself to this is malicious or not. You can have a full description, and then there are nuances. Like, well, you know what? I don't consider this really malicious because of whatever, right? So this is something I find very interesting. OK, so basically, I wanted to show you a few examples. To be honest, I was shy to do live, but seeing that other people did, I was thinking, no, why not? But well, I have a few videos just to show you. This is the first one. In here, what I did is I threw a few indicators of compromise, like, hey, our incident response team found this. So you can see I have preloaded the session. But if you can read it, if not, I will tell you. Here you can see the full description of every one of them. But this is not only a triage. It's telling you the role that every one of these indicators of compromise is doing. For every one of them, you find a reference in Google Threat Intelligence, like the malware family. You can see a description. You can see more IOCs. One of the IOCs was actually a lolbean that was being abused. And then you have attribution. You have how the attack developed, what was happening, what is the first sample that was being executed, dropping the second. So you get a full idea, and this takes just a few seconds. Just imagine that you find something suspicious, just drop it, and here you have a first assessment. So I find this one of the most interesting capabilities, and I think this saves a lot of time. Me, myself, in the past, was doing this kind of analysis, so I would have loved to have something like this. Not only telling you the triage, this is malicious or not, but what is the role of everything, what is the attribution, malware family, et cetera, when we know it. The second demo, actually, this is real time, so you can see how long it takes. And in this one, there is a new campaign, which is something that we see in Google Threat Intelligence. And this is based on our incident response teams. And they find something interesting that is happening across different users, right? So in this case, we are asking, hey, go to this campaign, check the TTPs, get all the technical details, and then create some hunting for us. So I can use this to search in my environment or whatnot. In here, I'm asking for Sigma rules. So you can see here we have a dedicated nice widget. So you can see this in nice colors. But the idea is that you can deploy this, in this case, manually. But we will talk later about future automation. Here you have a couple of different rules. So you can choose the one that you like the most. You could be, of course, more specific and say, well, the rule, I want to contain this and that. I want to be oriented to this or that system. So it doesn't really matter. The question is that you can very easily create something actionable and not just get more intelligence into some bag where you don't really have capability of doing anything unless the team just finds something and then starts working on this. I have to say that even though we will be talking about automation in a second, our goal is not really to provide fully automated rules. And let me explain myself. I think, and actually this is something that when I talk to different users, they tell me that they are not expecting the rules to be perfect in the sense that no rule is perfect, right? Sometimes you want a rule that is more specific for detection. Sometimes you want the rule to be more for hunting. And most of the teams are happy to have a rule that is covering 80% of the rule creation. So you will find different capabilities that you want to include in this rule later for polishing this and deploying in your environment accordingly. But maybe some users have a different opinion. All right, this is a nice one. Just let me talk about dark web data for a second. I told you about all the indicators of compromise, a few billions that we have, about all these reports, a few 100,000s, et cetera. We also have deep dark web data that comes from forums and comes from Telegram channels and comes from, well, I don't know, but it's like all this suspicious stuff, how this is being treated, et cetera. What we do here is that we pre-process this data, and actually my colleague Brandon is going to talk about this tomorrow morning, at 9:30, if you want to see more details. By pre-processing this data with LLMs, we are helping to make this easier for us to work in natural language. So there are many things that needs to be maybe translated or needs to be transformed, like they are talking about this or that. Anyways, this is an investigation that my colleague Joselillo did, and I found very interesting. So it starts searching for one handler. So this is some alias that someone is using in some channel. And then it's asking, hey, what is the idea being used by this guy? So it finds the idea and says, well, it looks like there is someone else using the same idea. Can you create a correlation of these two IDs? And it does, and actually it finds, like in this case, the timeline where these two IDs are being used in different channels. I understand that probably you're not seeing much. I'm just trying to explain to you what is happening here. And from here, is creating the whole profile of this attacker. All of this in natural language. You don't need to go and do regexes to search. You don't need to do nothing special. And at the end, it's creating this this graph, here it is, with the whole investigation. So, well, if this is the deliverable that you want, you can also create it. With this, I want to say a few things. The pre-processing of this data and providing the tools for the model is allowing this to be super quick and allowing to have this natural language conversation with the model in order to retrieve the data and to do a full investigation without needs to do anything more complicated. You can see that this is simply a conversation, and it's finding the different analysis, it's finding the different correlation for how they are being used in the same IDs and the same timelines, and then creating a graph list with the whole result. And this is super flexible. It can actually create, as I was saying, all these deliverables in different formats. And basically, this is the way that we want our users to feel when interacting with Google Threat Intelligence. Just to be flexible, to do things their way. We don't want to impose like any predetermined path. Okay, final example is about malware analysis. Here also, okay, this is also real time. So you can see here, hey, can you analyze this for me? And I'm simply uploading the sample. And the reason I did it real time is just for you guys to see how long it takes. Basically, this is a whole new sample that I modified myself. So you cannot find this in Google Threat Intelligence. Basically, you can search for something that exists. In that case, it will retrieve all the data from the analysis pipeline, and it will provide you an answer. It will like interpret all of this for you, and it will tell you what it does, what not. In this case, this is a whole new sample, and you can see it took a few seconds, and it's telling you not only if it is malicious or not, also the different capabilities. It's extracting some technical indicators that the C2 is connecting to, is providing you with, I don't know, TTPs, etc. And all of this is detonated in a private environment, okay? So it means that none of this data is going to be shared anyhow, anywhere. By the way, I didn't mention, but all the agentic capabilities are as private as they can be. There is absolutely no human in the loop. There is nothing that can be shared. There is nothing that is training absolutely anything. So all this data remains private, and this is normal because if you are doing some investigation, you don't want this sample to be shared with anyone else, right?
Let me jump in there again, right?
Yeah.
Because once again, for a company of our size, this is a super interesting feature. If I think about how malware analysis works today, you either need to have some malware analysts in-house, which we don't because they're expensive and we don't use them enough, or you actually pay a third party for it. Right? So for us, that means we're going to go to Mandiant probably 4 times a year, pay them a couple of $10,000, and give them 4 malware samples a year that we're very worried about. With this, we can actually just basically open the fire hose, and every single sample that we don't catch in the email inbox, for example, we can just pipe it straight to this. And the cool thing is we get out of it the C2 domains, we can immediately block on the proxies, we get all the indicators of compromise we can get from it in a structured way. Right? It just makes our life a lot easier because we now get more data that's targeted to us and that's actually relevant to us. And I think the Mandiant guys might not like you for it because they still sell the malware analysis as a service, but this is cool for customers.
All right. Yeah, so this is the idea. Then you can do it your way in the sense that, OK, you do the investigation, but I'm interested in what? Is malicious or not? The malware family, the different indicators that you extracted. Do you want to create a detection? Do you want to create a collection and just add this? So the idea is that, once again, you can use it as you want. So just very quickly, let me tell you a little bit what is in the roadmap for the next weeks. And basically, what we are doing now is working in 3 main directions. The first is about automation. Automation, well, it's logical, right? We want this to not just to be something that you do manually, but that you can integrate in any workflow, as Alex was saying. Let's imagine that you have a big company. Every time you find something that is suspicious, you want to have the capability to automate the analysis, right? So this is the first thing. And here, we will be discussing for a second, but we are discussing different formats. We will provide an API. Eventually, we'll provide also A2A, NCP, etc. In terms of malware analysis, we will discuss also in a bit what else we can do here. But basically, the transparency is one of the most important factors. And this is something we learned from Allianz. And I remember we discussed this in a meeting, and I thought it was very insightful. Like, our analysts are not going to really care about the result of the analysis. They will care about how the analysis is done, and they want to know in detail, because this is how you get trust, and this is how you think, how you trust the process will repeatedly provide the results that you're expecting. In terms of personalization, well, we want to make this as accurate as possible. We want to make sure that it's not noise that is providing you with the answer to whatever is your case. So let's say there is a new vulnerability, but it's not affecting anything you have in your security stack, in your tech stack, basically. Well, in that case, maybe you can simply ignore it or not. It's up to you. But you need this level just to make sure that everything that is provided according to your needs. In terms of imperatives, simplicity, flexibility, and trust. By the way, when I mention here community, is because following the pillars of our product, which in some sense is also VirusTotal, we want to build this ecosystem. And for instance, when you go into Agentic, you will find that we have predefined prompts for you, implementing some of the most important use cases. And basically, these are created by Mandiant experts. But other than these skills, prompts, whatsoever, we want the community to be able to provide. And we always believe that this is something probably, in many cases, is better than having just a bunch of experts, but to incorporate as many or as much knowledge as possible. OK. So when we are talking about advanced malware analysis, we are talking about integrating more specialized tools. And now we are working in improving our skills. So the agents have more autonomy in what they need to do in every step. Just let me tell you one example that is always an interesting one, is with the obfuscation. So when is the code ready for the analysis? Let's say that you have something and it's like base 64, and after base 64 is like XOR, and after XOR is like zip file. So it's not simply that you throw it to a tool and you get the output. The agent needs to have this flexibility to understand what is ready to go for the final round of analysis, right? So with the skills, by adding, as I was saying at the beginning, more specialized tools, we are providing this capability. The second is regarding the output, right? So the output, we want this to be as transparent as possible. And eventually, we want this to be something that the analyst can use as a workbench. So let's say we are providing you with a full list of different steps that the agent did in order to analyze some malware. And you are like, well, you know what? Tell me about step number 3, because I'm not really sure about the output. I want to get back. I want you to redo it in a different way. Instead of this tool, use this another tool. So this is something that we want also to allow users to be able to do this malware analysis in a natural language way. But so far, we want the agents to have this autonomy and to be able to have as advanced tools as possible and the skills necessary in order to provide this analysis. In terms of autonomy and integration, we are improving the capabilities of these prompts to be executed under certain conditions. So you can have your prompt of every morning at 8 a.m. Sending you a summary in a PDF of what happened for the last 24 hours, which is a very common one. But we are evolving into a model where you will have a full flow so you can make this as complex as, well, as you want. And you will have different conditions to trigger the flow. So let's say there is a new campaign, and this is targeting my industry. So I'm very interested in every time you find this, extract the technical details, create some rule, deploy in my environment, something like this, right? So this plus the integration is how we envision this increased autonomy, always under the control of the user. It's not like the agent will just be doing wild things for you. It's something that you will have under your control, under some flows, and with a degree of personalization. And actually, personalization is the last step, or the last pillar. And here we already talked about cleaning all this noise. But think about this like, well, I will be able to create also custom agents. So it's not like the agent that I define that is working for you without any other guidance. You can create your own agents, and your own agents have your own guidelines. You have your own integrations. You have your own data sources that you want to use also for whatever you want to do in the platform. And this will provide you with different, let's say, nuances in the answers. For instance, some of our users were saying, well, you know what? I want this team to use this type of agent because we want this kind of output. And I want this other team to have a different agent. So by creating different agents with this degree of personalization, including things like your tech stack, which we discussed, like PIRs, which are like priorities, intelligence requirements, et cetera, you will have a better way of customizing your experience. And here, Alex.
Cool. Thanks, Vicente.
Thank you.
So I wanted to just spend a bit of time talking about how we think about agentic and the SOC in general, not just the malware analysis agent, but also the triage agent and everything else that's coming in Allianz. Because I think there's, like, we've been playing with this now, and so I'm looking at Lars, who runs our detection and response team over here. I think we've been playing with it now for a bit over a year. So we've made some first experiences with that. As threatened before, just 2 words on Allianz. We've got 125 million customers in 72 countries, which itself means we cover about 72 languages, which in itself is fun for our SOC. We've got 160,000 employees and around about 350,000 endpoints. That number depends on which of our multiple CMDBs you ask. Some of them it's 0 and some of them it's millions, so the truth is somewhere in the middle. In terms of revenues, yeah, it's around $214 billion in revenues. No one cares about that. But basically, we cover everything from China to Argentina to the US to other funky markets like the Middle East we'll get rid of. But there's some other fun markets in there that have some specialities. The way we think about the agentic SOC is we stole a model that basically George Kurtz of CrowdStrike started using. And this is a busy slide, so you don't have to memorize this. There won't be a pop quiz. What we did is we basically took the autonomous car automation model and said, hey, they've got five levels that a lot of people understand. Level 0, and there's like the little ugly pictures on top. It looked prettier. It was prettified by Google or Gemini, I don't know. But it's your VW Beetle, right? It's the car that drives. Everything is manual. There's no driver assist. There's nothing. This is your SOC where every single incident goes to a human, and they look at it, and they do all the investigations themselves. Then as you move up the whole stack, you end up going from assist features, which is like, I don't know, if you've got power steering and maybe some brake enhancing things. You go to partial automation where you've got your emergency brake thing that detects a pedestrian running into the street. As you move further up the stack, you start with automation, right? You've got like I don't know, in Germany, you've got this motorway assist thing, like it steers itself. It's basically your Tesla auto steer feature probably, right? As you go further up the stack, you end up with the Waymos in level 4, and then level 5 is your Knight Rider. I don't know, in German the car was called Kit. I don't know what the American name was, right? So as a company and myself, I don't believe we will ever get to level 5. We can get to level 4.99999, but there will always be a human somewhere for 2 reasons, right? One is there will at some point be something that's so new that no model has ever seen it, and it'll just get stuck, or it'll do something wrong. The other reason is you need somewhere to fire if something goes wrong. you're laughing. So we've got, I think we did the math, it's like 121 regulators around the globe. They want a human to talk to, and a human to punish, and a human to put in jail if something goes wrong, right? The AI ate my homework story, that's not going to fly with a financial regulator, right? But so our push is to go as close as we can to level 5. We're currently somewhere, I'd argue, here between 2 and 3. So we're starting to automate some things. There's still a lot of conditional automation. But there's also good reason for that. So a lot of people think about, there's going to be this agentic thing that solves everything. For us, we're actually moving up the stack slowly, and we're doing this in a very deterministic way. So we come from a human-guided process where there's a wiki, and the agent looks up, I don't know, there's a malware on Alex's system, and I know that means I need to shut it down and rebuild it, whatever. Fine, that's the past. The next step for us is automation assisted, right? So it's your SOAR playbooks. It's basically the automation that says, hey, there's a malicious email that came in. Oh, malicious email means I need to block the sender, and I need to remove it from all the inboxes, and I'm probably going to send an automated email to the user telling them that they received a malicious email. Fine, right? But that's something we can solve deterministically. Now, the interesting thing here, if you put the stack together, you actually want to solve as much as you can, or we want to solve as much as we can in the deterministic layer. Because we know the outcome, we know what goes in, and we know the outcomes. Plus, it's cheap and it's fast, right? So yes, we looked at all the cool samples that you built with AI, but running AI is expensive both in terms of compute power in the back end, which at some point, as the customer, you pay for it, whether it's through tokens or your product cost. And speed is not as fast as if you have deterministic automation, right? So if I know the steps that need to run through, I can do that fully in the deterministic layer. If the deterministic layer gets stuck, it's going to pass it down to the agentic layer, right? It's like, oh, I got a malware that my script can't find in VirusTotal. Let's give it to the agent to look at what it actually is, right? And the agent might say, hey, I succeeded. Or if the agent gets stuck, it gives it to the human. So we end up having this stack where we say we try to solve what we can on the deterministic side. If that gets stuck or doesn't produce the results we want, we give it to the agentic layer. If that gets stuck, then ideally that agentic layer gives what Lars keeps calling atomic actions to the human. Right? So don't ask the human an open-ended question, because that means they start doing stuff. But ask it a very binary question, right? Is this malicious, yes or no? And then the human says, yes, this is malicious. And with that answer, hopefully he's unblocked, or they have unblocked the agentic layer, and that can continue. And once that result's there, we can go back to deterministic. That's the approach that we're trying to drive across that, across our automation journey. Because in the end, agentic is one level of one part of an automation journey. It doesn't solve everything by itself. And we have we have multiple pieces in place, right? So we have agentic triage in place already from Google, right? That helps us prioritize cases. Super important for us. We can use Vertex AI, so the built-in Gemini capabilities to do summarization, to do multi-language employee communication, because like our SOC we're based in what? India, Germany, and Spain. So they probably speak 5 or 6 languages in total. We need to cover 70. So for us, it's super useful to be able to write someone in Indonesia in Bahasa, which is the language they speak in Indonesia, and just be like, hey, your laptop was infected. What happened? And the person can respond in any language because it goes back into an LLM, and we get it back in German, English, or whatever other language you need in the SOC. Sounds like a super simple problem. It's not, because we deal with, like, we're an insurance business. We have agents that sit somewhere on a street in Thailand, and all they do is they sell insurance. They don't speak English. And our SOC doesn't speak Thai, so there's a certain language barrier there. The other thing for us is, what's not in place for us is the data challenge, right? Because there's a lot of data that AI doesn't have native access to. Like everything you've built in VirusTotal and all the Google data, that's not the problem, it's the company data. I was joking about multiple CMDBs before. Sadly, it's not a joke, don't tell anyone. But teaching an LLM to look the same system up in 17 CMDBs, and then maybe there's one in Thai that, I don't know, where the fields are in Thai and you need to do something special or do the IP address the other way around, that's hard, right? So that's something we're still trying to figure out. And you need the access for the agentic capabilities as well, right? So we try to lock everything down as much as possible, need to know, need to access policy, right? You need to figure out how to do that for the LLM in the right time. The good thing, though, is we can put a lot of this in place. What's harder for us is actually doing the human side, right? We always talk, it's very easy in a transformation to talk about technology. We're going to buy this agentic thing, it's going to solve the world. There's people and processes as well, right? And for us, we see that our people need to adjust to what the new future will look like in the SOC. Sorry, I made this with Gemini, so don't take the numbers on the chart as the real deal. This is just like to explain what it is, right? What we're seeing is we're seeing a 30% year-over-year increase in cases or alerts. And we're seeing the natives, the manual SOC capacity, that goes up a little bit because people upskill and we can hire a few more. But if I go to my board and tell them I need to hire 30% more people year over year, they're going to have one less very soon because they'll just kick me out. So what we're seeing is we need to use agentic. We need to use AI to actually accelerate our incident response because it's the only chance we have to keep up. I was just in a session with Heather Atkins, who's the CISO, not officially CISO, VP of security at Google. She scared me, right? There's a lot of stuff happening with like all the agentic vulnerability discovery and all those things. I believe that's going to go not just be at 30%, that's going to go like, you know, the Artemis rocket that went around the moon. Maybe it comes back, who knows. But what we're seeing is that we're not going to get rid of people in the SOC. We're going to try to turbocharge our SOC analysts, right? So we're probably going to get rid of L1. But with these capabilities that you guys provide, now the L1 can actually ask questions without having to understand how to do it. Right now, they need to understand where to look up MAC addresses and blah, 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 blah. They can just ask Gemini and be like, hey, is this malicious? What do I do with this? How do I do whatever? And we're seeing that today already, right? So we're seeing a lot more stuff being handled by lower levels, so we can upskill them and move them there. The other thing, we also need SOC people, just like everyone else in the business probably, to start changing their mindset, right? So we don't need heroes anymore. We don't need people that be like, yes, I can solve everything and I'm going to solve it myself. Because what's going to happen is they need to start to manage AI agents, right? So that's the mindset shift from I need to solve it to I need to actually orchestrate other things or people to solve, or people, not people, sorry. AI agents are not people, but other things to solve things. Plus, they need to start understanding where the root causes are if something fails. Right, so if the LLM gets stuck and it gets stuck every single time, it's not about saying yes every single time in the prompt to say this is malicious, but figuring out how we can fix that fundamentally because we need the scale. One more slide from me. The other thing, I joked about it already, the accountability will remain the same. Right? So for us, that means the CISO and the board, they will remain accountable. So it's not going to replace everything. But that also means that I need to understand what's actually going on, right? And Vicente talked a bit about trust before. We need to make sure that we understand how the AI models think. And I don't like about thinking in AI models because they're like how they guess the next word or whatever they do. But we need to, A, understand that, but we also need to audit it and we need to log it, right? Because at some point, if the regulator comes, and I was joking about that before, but the regulator will come and say, hey, there was this incident, why did you miss it? Right? And if the answer is, the AI decided, I don't know, that's going to be much tougher than to say, look, this is what we did, this is the steps it took, here's the output, this is why the agent or the SOC analyst decided it was not malicious because that was the output of something, or they decided it was malicious and it wasn't. So that's, I think, an important one to keep in mind, that audit and regulation, at least in Europe, I'm German, sorry, but we're heavily regulated. They don't keep up with this. They're still stuck in the 80s, sorry, maybe in the 90s by now. But like the regulation will still require you to do everything you did before. The other important thing is that we luckily did right by accident, I think, in the beginning. We got the board excited for this, right? Which also, like we explained to them, hey, this will allow you to do more and it'll give us better outcomes. And that to us actually unlocked quite a bit of support and money, which is always good. The problem now is they come like, hey, are we done with this? Our board is not very good at understanding that security is a continuous process, and kind of like Heather called it a flywheel, right? So you start it, it needs to go faster and faster. They always want to hear when it's done. And I think that's something that also, like, if you go talk to your senior management, explain to them that this is not a one-off. This is not something where you insert like $2 and it's done in 5 minutes. But this is a continuous investment and continuous process that needs to run. That's some of our learnings, but what we did together, we figured out, we sum it up.
Yeah, well,
some of the key learnings and things we wanted to highlight.
I wanted to say that the thing is for me, like all this path, all this learning together, in some sense, understanding each other's vision, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so important. And with this, we are learning to provide this flexibility, to provide with this accountability, and to give the users like different possibilities instead of trying to enforce them. Like, hey, this is what you can do and this is what you can't. But just learning in this way how we can improve different tools, how we can like fine-tune everything to make sure that this is really useful and it's really, well, being the difference that we need in order to supercharge the different teams.
Cool. So with that, I think we talked about the search to solve, high-value efficiency, built on trust. I think the trust thing is also important towards your provider, right? That's why we very early on started working with Vicente on how to make sure we have the transparency we built into that. From my side, sorry, I shouldn't hit that. Critical success factors, I think you all know this, right? But the technology transformation is normally the easy part. It's the people and the processes that you need to adjust. With AI, we see that there's some people that don't want to deal with AI. And as harsh as it is, I'm not exactly sure what future they will have at the company, because that's something that, especially in the SOC and in security, we need to embrace it. And the other thing is make sure you understand what prerequisites and what preparations you need to do first, right? So I talked about the data, understand where your data sits, how the AI can get access to it, how you can pump it into it. One example that I keep talking about, and I probably shouldn't, is, but we reuse some of the public IP space internally because we ran out of internal IPs. Yes, no one does that. Talk to any big company, they all do it. But that's very hard to teach an LLM, right? Because they were like, oh, that was this person from the outside that tried to do something on the inside. How did they get in? And you were like, no. That 44 IP address space, that's fine. We're cool with that, right? You can teach that to an L1 analyst on day one, but teaching that to an LLM sometimes is a bit more tricky. And I think to leave this on a good note, right, and I stole this from another CISO in Germany, cyber is an exponential problem, right? And we used to fight it with linear means. I think now with Agentic, we actually have the chance to use exponential means to solve that, which is good because we'll need that. And with that, I think that's it from us. Yeah. We've got 2 minutes from questions and a producer that's telling us to wrap up. So if anyone wants to ask a quick question, go for it. Otherwise, we'll let you run to your next session. There's one over there.
You mentioned before that if something goes wrong with the AI, the agents, whatnot, you're still accountable to the regulator, which is, makes sense. But do you have a way of maybe an audit trail to see if something does go wrong with the AI agent or your processes? That you could refer to that log, you could do a whole investigation, et cetera, for the regulator?
Yeah, so that's what I talked about, right? So we log everything that the AI outputs, including the thought process. And that's really for 2 reasons. I can put an L3 analyst on it to review that, to kind of do sample testing to make sure it's doing the right thing. And the other thing is really to prove to an auditor or a regulator why certain decisions were made. Right? And is that foolproof? Is that going to save me from jail or whatever happens to me? I don't know, but at least I have some kind of evidence that we did the right thing, right? The right intentions were there. It's not that we just threw something into an AI black box and hope for the best.
Well, it should be like any other security product, like leaving the trail, the logs, and just being something predictable, and when not, to have an understanding what happened, which maybe nobody knows, but at least there is some trace to understand that failed at some point. So,
cool. One more question, and then I think we're out of time. Otherwise, run for lunch before we can. There's one in the back. We'll do that one quick.
There is one question there in the back.
Microphone is running to you. Thank you.
It's hard to say with.
Sorry. So on that topic of logging, in your mind, the difference between someone using an agent versus an agent acting autonomously, how would you move towards logging that difference?
I'm not sure what you mean. So I would log both, right? So if I prompt an agent, obviously that's also recorded because I want to know what the person did that prompted it. But you need to record both, if that's the question.
Thank you.
Cool. With that, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining us here.